A few years ago, Helen is 10 years old. He is a cheerful child who has a lot of friends. Like other children, games and laughter are everything to him. His best friend, Phil, often goes to Helen's home to play with him. Helen's parents are always busy with work. His father often travels for several months at a time, and his mother always returns home at midnight. Compared to the others, Phil is a rather mature kid. Both he and Helen enjoy drawing, but Phil's drawing is always negative and creepy graffiti. He said it was a sort of venting, and it made him feel better. On a snowy day, Phil, as usual, takes his drawing bag and goes to Helen's home. Helen opened the door and welcomed him. Although it is winter, the heating in the room makes Phil feel really warm. "You're sweating. Take off your coat and I'll hang it somewhere," Helen says as he sees Phil sweating everywhere. Phil hesitates for a few seconds. No thanks," he shakes his head. Helen rushes forward to pull Phil's coat sleeves and sees his wrists are covered in bruises. "Is it your father? Did he get drunk again?" Helen says. Phil lowers his head, but doesn't respond to Helen's question. "Come to the bathroom, I'll help you apply some salve," Helen says. They enter the bathroom, and Phil took off his coat. His neck and back are full of bruises. Helen's hands rub the salve on his back. Helen cannot imagine how Phil's father treats him. Phil's father is a drunkard. He was violent to his wife and child. Phil's mother couldn't endure it anymore, so she left the family. After that, his mother remarried and lived a happy life. Occasionally, she would bring some gift to Phil. His father complained about this. He distorted the truth, pushing all the blame to Phil's mother. "You should stay away from him. He isn't fit to be your father," Helen says. "I know that, but I don't know what to do. We're just children," Phil says. "I just don't want you to hurt, brother." Phil goes silent for a few seconds and replies, "Things will get better, right?" He smiles bitterly. Helen doesn't understand why Phil won't fight back, and why he always pretends nothing happened in front of everyone else, even if it's something severe. One morning, Phil wakes up before his father does, and prepares to go to Helen's house. He puts on his shoes, walks out, and after walking for a few steps, he sees someone waving to him. "Phil, my dear, it's Mom," Phil's mother says. Phil rushes to her for a big hug. "Mom bought new clothes for you. It's cold in winter. Remember to wear warm clothes." His mother has bags full of new clothes, toys, watercolor, and pastel, as well as carrying words that came from a lovely mother. Being able to meet his mother is the happiest thing for Phil. After chatting with him for a while, she prepares to leave. "Mom, can you stay with me for a little longer?" Phil says. "I'm sorry, dear. My husband is waiting for me in the car." His mother leaves the gifts to Phil and proceeds to the car where her new husband is. Phil picks up the gifts, proceeds to the park, and sits on the snow and gazes at the sky. He doesn't know what to do. Once, when he took the gifts back home, his father was very angry with him, and he threw the gifts into the fireplace to burn them. He doesn't want this to happen again. Just then, 3 kids come up to him. "You have the bitch's garbage again?" one of the kids says. "What did you say?" Phil looks at him. "We saw your mother. My parents told me. She's a bitch who abandoned her husband and child to live with another man." "No, she isn't," Phil got angry and shouted at them. "That's the truth. What the hell can you do about it?" he says aggressively, and pushes Phil's shoulder to provoke him. But Phil punches him, which starts the fight. One of the kids picks up a stone and threw it at Phil's head. The stone, as well as the white snow, gets dyed with red. Phil falls to the ground, eyes wide, and stops moving. "Oh my God, what did you do?" "I'm scared. I just hope he fucking stops." "What do we do now?" "Perhaps we can bury him?" At the time, Helen waits for Phil. He looks out of the window and sees nobody coming. He rushes out to look for Phil as he is worried about him, but he can't find him. He comes to the park and sits on the bench, but then he sees some unusual colors in the snow, with some of them being red. He suddenly has a very bad feeling. He takes off his gloves and digs the snow with his hands. He then sees more and more red. This is not good, he thinks. Next, he thinks he touched something. A nose, then a face. Phil's face. Helen's best friend is buried in the snow. Oh no. Helen touches the face and cries. Just then, he heard footsteps, and he sees the 3 kids standing beside him. They looked at him with a despising manner and ran away without saying a word. Helen doesn't know what's going on, and doesn't understand what it means. Helen cries for a long time beside the body until someone grabbed his shoulder from behind. "Are you Helen Otis?" Helen turns around and sees a police officer and his mother. The 3 kids framed him as the murderer. Helen doesn't have any evidence to prove what was going on. They know, however, Helen threw a stone at Phil's head, killing him, and tried to bury him, according to the 3 witnesses. After the investigation and interrogation, Helen goes home, enters his room, and sits on the bed, and after a few minutes his mother comes in and sits beside him. "Mommy, I didn't kill anyone," Helen's blue eyes showing fear. "I know, but the situation doesn't look good for you." His mother hugs her child as she speaks with a choking voice. There's no clear evidence that Helen killed Phil, but as an accused person, he doesn't have any specific argument to refute. He doesn't even know what happened. The next day, Helen sees other children playing at the park, and all of them looked at him. "Hi, what's up?" "You killed Phil." "My parents told me to stay away from you," the kid says. "Dad said you're a killer." "That's not true," Helen replies. "We can't be sure. Maybe you're lying," one of the children says. Helen knows whatever he says will be in vain. All of the friends backed away from him. No one believed him. Everyone regarded him as a murderer. "Helen, good news!" Helen's mother wakes him up in the morning. "There was a witness to the whole thing, and he was willing to testify for you." Helen is surprised. He can't believe to have someone to have witnessed the whole thing. He explained everything and finally let the whole thing end. "Helen, I want to thank them tomorrow. Do you want to go with me? Maybe you can become friends." Helen's mother prepared some gifts for the witness. "No, I want to stay home to draw." Helen has given up on making any friends. He's changed. He has become indifferent, with his drawing full of negative and strange graffiti. When it comes to the snowy days, he will remember those dreadful eyes of the corpse that was in the snow. That memory is what he can't forget, even if he wants to. 3 years later, the witness, Vic Stephen, changed his name to Tom Stephen.